الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. Today we're looking at the chapter Bab ما جاء في كثرة الحلف. Chapter what has been reported about frequent oath making. So here we're referring to the issue of taking an oath by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and being excessive meaning taking a lot of oaths. What's the ruling? What's the position? What are the rulings or the guidelines in relation to that? Kathratul halif. The first thing we need to pay attention to is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, and Shaykh al-Islam, He uses this as the initial evidence, وَحْفَظُوا أَيْمَانَكُمْ, and protect your oaths. Protect your oaths. Surah Ma'idah, ayah 89. So here Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen, he says, rahimahullah, al-halif, it means swearing and a vow, which is to affirm a thing by mentioning something of reference, using particular expression with any of the letters of oaths, which are the letters ba, waw, and ta in Arabic language. So when it comes to an oath, the intent behind it is that you are confirming something using Allah's name. So when it says here something out of reverence, it means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because we're not supposed to swear or take an oath by other than Allah. In Arabic language, huruf al-half are the waw, the ba, and the ta. So most famously, wallahi, by Allah. And we covered some of this in the chapter previous about the rulings and regulations of swearing only by Allah, and that's tawheed. To swear by other than Allah is an act of minor shirk, we said, unless someone he believes that which he's swearing upon is greater than or equal to Allah. In that case, it's disbelief. Because we know ta'zeem belongs to Allah only. Here we're talking about excessively, making a lot of oaths in general. Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen, he says, rahimahullah, what's the relevance of this chapter to Kitab At-Tawheed? Is that a person's frequent oath making with Allah indicates that the individual hasn't enough reverence for Allah in his heart, which will necessitate respect for the oath using Allah's name. Having high reverence for Allah is from the perfection of Tawheed. So someone who's always swearing by Allah's name unnecessarily, in reality he doesn't have the true veneration of Allah. And this is an important issue because we know many people are trialed with this. We find them, they say wallahi and tallahi or billahi all the time for things that are minuscule, things that are major, they just say it. So there are certain rules and regulations in relation to that. But the first benefit is the person who is doing this, he doesn't have enough respect for Allah. For Allah's name should not be taken in vain. Even non-Muslims, they believe this. At one point in their history, in Christianity, they used to believe that God's name should not be taken in vain. You don't just say, right, God this and God this, or especially when you're talking about something which is not that important. So they use then euphemism or these type of lesser words like gosh, right, in order to avoid that, using God's name. Can you imagine, right? This is now in our society, swearing by Allah or swearing by Allah has become easy. So swearing by Allah is not permissible. Swearing by Allah excessively, it's not adab. And so the first thing we want to benefit from this chapter, we need to avoid being people who swear a lot. And as a nice benefit we take, what is then the ruling on such a person? Shaykh Salih Fawzan, hafizahullah, he was asked this question in relation to someone taking excessive oaths. So he says in the answer to this question that in reality the one who swears by Allah a lot, in reality it's wajib upon us to have ihtiram for Allah and His name, respect for Allah and His name. وَلَا يَجُوزَ الْإِكْثَارُ مِنْ الْحَلْفِ. It's not permissible to make a lot of oaths. As Allah says, وَحْفَظُوا أَيْمَانَكُمْ, preserve your oaths. So if you're always saying wallahi, 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 and things you're saying is not important, or it's even not a haja, what exactly does it mean about your respect for Allah's name? It's not correct. Because Allah criticizes in the Quran those, وَلَا تُطِعْ كُلَّ حَلَّافٍ مَهِينٍ. And don't obey, Allah says, every halaf who's muheen, who's belittled. Halaf means one who makes a lot of oaths. So here Allah criticizes a character, a particular personality for those who make a lot of oaths and are also at the same time lowly. So here he says, upon you, such a person, to make tawbah to Allah from that action, and don't make an oath except in need. And then he continues by talking about the issue and the ahkam regarding the oath, and we'll get to it. So that's the first benefit we want to take. So remind ourselves and our brothers and sisters that we shouldn't be people taking oaths continuously and excessively. And we sad to say in our society, but this is common amongst the Muslims. Wallahi, and they're always saying it, sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally. So there's a slight difference between the two, but it should be hold back from that. So here Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen, rahimahullah, he says, and protect your oaths. Allah mentions this in the verse in the context of the atonement for the oath. And all oaths have their beginnings, ends, and middle. The beginning is oath making, and the end is the atonement, and the middle course is breaking the oath, which occurs when an individual carries out what he made the oath to leave off. So you have the beginning, middle, and end. Beginning is to make the oath in the beginning. Yameen or half in the beginning. The middle is once you made the oath with intention. Because once you made it with intention, now it's applicable. It's in standing. You're not allowed to go against that which you said you won't do, or you said you would do. That's the middle. You have to protect yourself from hinth. Hinth means you broke your oath. And the end is, if you did break your oath, after having intention to uphold it, you have to make a farah, expiation. So we see how serious the issue. Those who make a lot of oaths, especially in relation to things in the future, because this is what we're talking about. We're not talking about oaths and things of the past. What if you say, for example, somebody said you did something, Wallahi, I didn't do it. And you just keep saying Wallahi every time. Wallahi, I did this and I didn't do that. And especially in relation to the past, it's not the same ruling. So the issue here is in relation to saying, I will do something or leave off something in the future, mumkin. Mustaqbal, mumkin, ulama say. Mustaqbal means the future, mumkin means you're capable of doing it. Not things you can't do. For example, you can't say, by Allah, I'm going to walk to Hajj from Canada. It can't happen. It's not mumkin, ghayr mumkin. Because we know there's water in front of us. Well, the benefit take from that, if it's in the past, you're saying, Wallahi, you're lying. This is called Yameen al-Ghamus. This is called the one that's immersing yourself in sin. To the point where ulama said there's no expiation for that one. It's tawbah ila Allah. It's too severe. Because you lied about the past, number one, and the past is behind us. And the second thing is, it's so severe because you know you were lying when you took Allah's name in the lie. So the benefit we take from this, we're talking about expiation in relation to that which is in the future, which you're capable of doing, and with intention. So intention, you have intention. If it's not with intention, the ulama say that's a different category of oath. It means you said it by, that's your habit. Sometimes you say Wallahi, Na'am Wallah. You didn't intend by that, by Allah, you say it. That's different. What we want to be careful of is that people who swear a lot, they don't care about these rules or are heedless of them because they're not paying attention. They just say, Wallahi, I will do it, I won't do it. And they're just going at it. They have no idea. Maybe they owe now expiation, they don't know, or they don't know. Subhanallah al-Azim. This is so important. And we know from the tongues, one of the greatest reasons people enter the hellfire is through the slips of the tongues. Comes one narration, most of the sins of Bani Adam, they come from their tongue. Most. So authentic hadith. So it shows you, if you just, Wallahi all the time, and you don't really pay attention to what you're doing, dangerous for somebody. Therefore, every oath to do a thing that has already gone past does not involve oath breaking. So Shaykh Muhammad says, if it's for the past, no kafara. Does that mean no sin? No, there's still sin. If you know you're lying, it's a sin. Right? If you say, Wallahi, especially like in things like sports or things that, disputes, Wallahi, I didn't say that. And you said it. There's no kafara on you, but you get sin. It's no expiation, but you still get sin because you lied using Allah's name. So it involves lying and also saying that which you knew was wrong. In Allah's name, so venerating Allah's name. He says then, and what does not include oath breaking does not at all entail atonement. However, if he was truthful, he has fulfilled his oath, otherwise he is a sinner, because atonement only comes with respect to a future matter. So we said, in the future, that which you're capable of doing. He says, is it permissible for an individual to swear an oath over a mere thought he has? The answer, yes. And that has many evidences, such as the statement of the one who had intimacy with his wife during the daytime in Ramadan. And he said, by Allah, there is no household between the two lavas, means in all of Medina, who is poorer than me. And the Rasul I gave him the expiation. And he said, go and give this to somebody who's poor. He said, I don't know anyone. Wallahi, I don't know anyone between the two lavas. It means all of Medina was poorer than me. Again, this is his mere thought. He doesn't know. It means it could be, but it's not likely according to his opinion. So Shaykh says this is proof that if you have a preponderant opinion, you think most likely what I'm saying is correct, it's okay to swear by Allah by it. For example, someone say, by Allah, I will do this. Most likely I believe you're going to do it, then something happens, you can't do it. You used the best opinion. Same thing if you said, Wallahi, I don't think that's true, and I find out it's true. This is based on your knowledge, it's okay to do that. And many ulama permitted this, like Ibn Taymiyyah, Shaykh Ibn Taymiyyah, and Ibn Qudamah before him. So it's permissible to use your opinion. You don't have to be 100% sure necessarily. He says others say it is not, but what's correct is you can. And then he says here, to give some examples. Like for example, by Allah, Z will arrive tomorrow. Like for example, if he's coming from a travel and he comes the next day. You know expiation. You just based on what knowledge you had, he's coming tomorrow, then he happened not to come. He says then, continuing, protect your oaths comes after he subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned oaths, atonement, and oath breaking. So it applies to all of the situation oaths. Those oaths which we need expiation, those which don't need, and those which are sin. The bottom line is protect your oaths. He says a benefit then, what about someone who frequently makes oaths in that which is unintentional? So he says unintentional, so for example someone say no by Allah, or yes by Allah. He said in this case it doesn't count. So the benefit we take the oath has to be with intention. إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. So if you said by Allah something and you I didn't intend that, Allah said, لَا يُؤَاخِذُكُمُ اللَّهُ بِاللَّغْوِ فِي أَيْمَانِكُمْ. Allah will not hold you to account or punish you for the unintentional statements in your oaths. So that's from the laghu. That's one category too. That which is you don't intend from oaths, it's called Yaminul laghu. The one that's unintentional. You didn't really intend. You just said it. So here the Messenger ﷺ also tells us if someone swears an oath and you find something better than that thing, atone for your oath and do the better thing. So we also know a ruling, when you have two situations, or a situation came, you swore by Allah you're going to do it, then something else came up and you find it's better than what you swore that you will do, then you do that which is better, you expiate the thing that you said you were going to do. What does expiation mean? It's between three things. Well, altogether you may say. Right? There's combination of choice and an order. Right? So it's important when we talk about expiation, we're talking about freeing someone who was a slave, feeding and clothing 10 poor people, and someone can't do these two together or one of them, then he goes to fasting 3 days. Preferably in a row. If he's not able to, then 3 days in general. So we're not talking about the kafara here because we spoke about it before, but Shaykh says the kafara, the atonement for breaking oaths, is feeding 10 poor persons with the average quantity of food in your household, or to clothe them, or freeing a slave. So you have then these three. So an individual could choose what is easy for him, but whoever has none of these, then he must fast 3 days consecutively, according to Ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. The benefit of this chapter is protecting our tongues from saying things that are going to get us in trouble. That means you have to do atonement, or disrespecting Allah's name. As a believer, we know from the perfection of Tawheed, especially Tawheed al-Asma' wa Sifat, we have respect for Allah's name. So we know, for example, we don't go to the washroom with things that bear Allah's name. So respect, everyone understands that, and one would carry a mushaf or a piece of writing or anything with Allah's name. But then now we have on our tongues, we should respect Allah's name more so. So we must be careful. When you swear, be careful. Now what's the outcome if you don't do this? It means if you're loose with your tongue and you say Wallahi, as is common in our culture. Such to the point now even non-Muslims, they know what Wallahi is because we say it so much. They know Wallahi now because we say it all the time, that even then they say Wallahi within the community. So the Shaykh said, number one, outcome is guarding yourself from even beginning to say it, because if someone is known to swear Allah, it damages the individual's credibility and brings about people's doubt in relation to his narrations. If you always say Wallahi, when you swear again, no one trusts you. You already say it anyways, and you lie and you tell the truth. And this is important. Why would someone need to say Wallahi all the time unless he is not trustworthy in the first place? If you say I didn't do it, and you're trustworthy, khalas. Why have to say Wallahi? It means you have something wrong with your character, or you don't believe he would believe you. And we know Rasulullah was al-Amin. We have times where he swore and a lot of times he didn't. So we need to ask ourselves the question, why are we not trustworthy? Alaykum bi-sidq. Hadith Rasulullah said, we should be upon you is trustworthiness and trust and speaking truth. So if we always speak the truth, you don't need to say wallahi. And when we do say it, we will take it seriously because he swore by Allah. And this man is not lying. وَكُونُوا مَعَ الصَّادِقِينَ. First thing we do to accompany ourselves, people who are trustworthy. We don't want to hang around people who are always lying and we all end up lying. I don't lie with Allah's name. Number two, if you did take an oath with an intention and you're going to hope to fulfill it, two is to protect it while in the middle by fulfilling your oath. So if you say, wallahi, I'm not going to go over there, or somewhere you're not going to go, then fulfill your oaths. Don't just say, well, you won't do it, do it. Don't go there. And this is important because fulfilling oaths is from ibadah. If you want to be another, we know the believer, he's the one who fulfills the oaths. Allah praises them as ibadah. We know this. So it's nothing wrong if you did make an oath and you fulfill it. It's actually a good deed. Thirdly, protecting it at the end, which means if you did break your oath, you give kafara. Nowadays, people don't know that. Kafara is actually something owing on us. Once we did break the oath and we knew it was wrong, we have to expiate. It's ibadah, it's part of the deed. You can't say, oh, I have to do it now. Yes. Now, the benefit we take from this is that Islam teaches us this, and it's for some people, bab rizq. The masakeen, it's a bab rizq for them, that because of our mistakes, we give food and drink to them. And so the responsibility upon us, if you have any oaths owing, and you made a mistake in them, you expiate them. What if you made one oath and you broke it 100 times? Same oath, you did it 100 times, I'm going to do it, and you never expiated. How many expiations do you have to do? Qawl al-Sahih, just one. As long as you didn't expiate it, if you did it 100 times, just one. Otherwise, it's a burden. You have to have 100 expiations. But if you said 100 different things, and then you broke all 100 different things, that's a different story. Right? The same way if someone expiated one oath, then he gone back to it and did it again, another one's owing. So it's very important upon us that we protect ourselves. Because at the end of the day, this is something which can be a burden for us if you're not careful, and also get you sin. Because you didn't know, and then you fell into the problem, the prohibition, and then expiation owing on you, and you still didn't do it. Because expiation also costs money. Sometimes you're not able to. You have to fast. And fasting is a responsibility as well. Fourth, he says, we can add a fourth meaning, which is that he does not swear by other than Allah, because the Messenger ﷺ referred to swearing by other than Allah as half an oath. And the reality means it's not a real oath. Next, the Rasul ﷺ said, Hadith Abu Hurairah, he said, I heard Allah's Messenger ﷺ saying, swearing promotes the item but derives the profit. So here he's talking about ahkam in relation to business. That somebody who swears, he said, أَحَلِفُ مَنْفَعَةٌ لِلسِّلْعَةِ مَمْحَقَةٌ لِلْكَسَبِ. Swearing by Allah in business transaction promotes the product or the item, derives the benefit or the profit. So what the benefit from here? That there are certain people, they swear by Allah when they do business transactions. And that's how they sell. So Allah is the best in the market. And everyone knows it's not, because in the world today it's even easier to check. Because you check the reviews, you know you're lying. But today people just say this, wallahi, they use wallahi just to sell it. So if it works, what do you really get? You only get the sil'ah sold, but you get no barakah, your kasab. And what's the problem with this today? We forget. Barakah is what we need in our wealth, not a large amount of wealth. مَا قَلَّ وَكَفَى خَيْرٌ مِّن كَثَرَ وَأَلْهَى. One hadith someone said, what's small and sufficing is better than what's much and distracting. If you have a lot of money, it doesn't mean you have barakah in your money. But you have a little bit and it's barakah, halal money, it goes far away. Today, we look at this, we see, subhanAllah, a lot of people do that. They talk to you, come to sell you something, they try to use every tactic and they swear by Allah even. Try to convince you, because when someone swears by Allah, we take it seriously. So Shaykh says here, it promotes the product, means it popularizes the commodity. And then he says, vowing about a commodity could be regarding the commodity itself or form or its attribute or value. So regarding the commodity, you can such as swearing that it's from so-and-so industry known for quality products, while the case is not. So someone will say, what kind of grade is it? Grade A, it's from this place. It's all lie. Or maybe he swore by Allah, but he wasn't 100% truthful. Or he could swear in relation to its form. He says it's made of iron, but it's actually made of wood. Or it's actually like swearing that it's a good product, but it's bad. Or the value, swearing that the price is 10 units, while it's actually 8. So all that is included. So as a businessman, we learn some ahkam. You shouldn't swear to sell your product, because it's something which the Prophet says blameworthy. Why? Because you may be lying. And that's why most people might go to that level. Because if you're selling a product, it's mu'amalat. If the product is good, it sells itself, we say, right? Good products sell themselves. You don't need to use Allah's name, subhanahu wa ta'ala, to sell a product. When you know you're not telling the truth. But what the harm is, it deprives the Prophet. Which means wasted. The wastage includes the physical, when Allah brings a thing by which his wealth will be ruined, such as fire or spoilage, or that the owner of the wealth himself falls ill and spends entire wealth seeking cure. Wastage could also be abstract, near him, and how many tremendous wealth, but do not benefit by it. Out of stinginess, he will live like someone who's poor when he's rich. So when it says mamhaqatun lil-kasab, it could mean that the kasab, the actual profit, will be lost through some ways. Allah, He will test you. And we know that Allah tests us. نَقْصِ مِنْ أَمْوَالٍ. Or it could be from the angle that the person, he'll gain the provision, but it becomes bakhil. Because this person, he didn't do it the halal way. So the benefit we take from that, from buying and selling, we should avoid using Allah's name to sell the products. Be honest and truthful. And this is what Rasulullah told us. مِنْ غَشَّنَا فَلَيْسَ مِنَّا. What about the one who cheats us and uses Allah's name? Imagine, this actually happens. It's not something far-fetched. We know people may do this in the Muslim community or the business world. So there are some rules applying to those who are businessmen. And this is important because for those who be interested in business, it's important to know the ahkam. Mentioned in Jami' Tirmidhi reports narration, authentic. Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he wouldn't allow in the marketplaces in Medina anybody to buy and sell unless he knows Kitab, the chapter of buying and selling. So in Tirmidhi, Tirmidhi, Sahih narration of Umar. Imagine, business is everyone loves business because of money, but they don't love it from the knowledge side. And why is this important? Because if you are into the business, know the rules. One hadith Rasulullah told the Sahaba, إِنَّ التُّجَّارَ هُمْ فُجَّارِ. Businessmen, they're fasiqeen, they're wicked people. Sahaba were so shocked. Ya Rasulullah, halal bay' wa haram riba. Allah made halal bay' and buying and selling, but He made haram riba. How can He say this? He says because they say that which they don't do, and they swear by Allah and they lie. Subhanallah, imagine. When you look at this kind of hadith, you have to say it's true. And it's also scary that we don't just go into the business for profit, and when we get mamhaqatun lil-kasab, you get nothing. Because you didn't come with a proper business model. Proper business model, which is taqwa Allah. First and foremost, the business model begins with taqwa Allah. Not how I can make business and cheat people. And we have to be honest. Today, a lot of people, they don't know this stuff. And we look at our pious Salaf Salih, our pious predecessors, they were businessmen with taqwa. So it's encouragement. If you're in the business and want to get into business, you learn something about this. That's one benefit. Don't away from the swearing by Allah when you're selling products. Keep it the way it is. If the product is good, it'll sell itself. Be honest. Honesty is the best policy. We know these things. But it's an important reminder because in our community we all are complaining about people cheating us and deceiving us and telling us things that they shouldn't have. Salman al-Farisi radiyallahu ta'ala anhu reported, the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, 3 kinds of people Allah will not speak to them, neither will He purify them, and a severe torment awaits them. The gray-haired adulterer, the arrogant poor person, and the man who makes Allah his own commodity, and he will neither purchase nor sell except he swears by Him. This hadith is reported by Tabarani, and here Shaykh al-Islam says it's a hadith which is sahih, and here the Shaykh Hizam, he mentions it has some weakness. No, it's actually sahih, hadith sahih. So this hadith is an important hadith because the last part is the benefit. وَرَجُلٌ جَعَلَ اللَّهُ بِضَاعَتُهُ لَا يَشْتَرِي إِلَّا بِيَمِينِهِ وَلَا يَبِيعُ إِلَّا بِيَمِينِهِ. And a man who makes Allah his commodity, not literally, but we know, using His name to sell and to buy, which again we just mentioned is not wrong. But the hadith begins, لَا يُكَلِّمُهُمُ اللَّهُ وَلَا يُزَكِّيهِمْ وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ, which is all signs of a major sin. Those are indications of a major sin. Allah won't purify them, He won't speak to them, and for them is a severe punishment. And these are important indications that whenever the Prophet ﷺ, or in the Quran, Allah says that whatever comes after is a big sin. Because the fact that Allah won't speak to you, and so some people in the Quran, Allah mentions Yawm al-Qiyamah won't speak to them. Or Allah SWT won't purify them. That's what we want, purification of our sins, and punishment waiting for them. So the first one is, it says, Ushaymitun Zan, which means pretty much an old man who commits adultery. And so here what we benefit from is that how come these categories of people are mentioned? Because each one of them comes with a particular action which is the greatest of sins in that angle. So he mentioned the Shaykh al-Uthaymeen rahimahullah describing this. What I yuzakkihim means certification, endorsement. So on the day of judgment, he will not certify them and their actions, nor be witness for their iman because of their evil deeds. And Allah won't speak to them. He says what is intended by this, rejecting speech here is evidence that it's essentially affirmed. Allah will speak. Allah does speak, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yawm al-Qiyamah, people will be spoken to. The same way people will be seeing Allah. And some will not. كَلَّا إِنَّهُمْ عَنْ رَبِّهِمْ يَوْمَئِذٍ لَمَحْجُوبُونَ. Nay, surely some evildoers will be veiled from seeing their Lord. So here we benefit, he says he will not veil the evildoers from seeing him except for the fact that the righteous will see him. And the Shaykh speaks about Yawm al-Qiyamah, how our body parts, our limbs, our hands, our thighs, they will speak on our behalf for the things that we used to do. So the one who is gray-haired and commits zina is the worst, because at that age he's not someone desirous of zina. We know that because when they get older, the shahwat diminish versus the one who's young. So one who's old and committing zina is the worst of things, because he's old now, and most likely he was married already. So what is the benefit of that? And to show you again how serious these issues are, that nowadays in our society these things are considered even normal, or even we hear about them, we don't think about how severe they are. Na'udhu billah. So that's one. Number two, he mentions the one who is poor and arrogant. This is important, because when one is poor, he doesn't have anything to be arrogant about. We have people who are poor and arrogant. It's not befitting. Allah says, وَجَدَكَ عَائِلًا فَأَغْنَى. We found you poor, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we enriched you, we made you rich. So he says here that the arrogance which is intended, arrogance is either towards the truth or looking down on people. Because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that kibr, to reject the truth when it comes, or to look down upon people, hold them in contempt. So the person who's arrogant, usually we expect him to be wealthy or to have status or some knowledge or something. Position, certifications, not someone poor. So we also benefit from that usually poor people are humble. And it's important that we be humble anyways. Even if we're not rich or poor or rich, doesn't matter, you should be humble. So it's very bad to be poor and to be arrogant. And then he mentions the last category, which is our benefit, the one who makes Allah his own commodity. Means he makes swearing with Allah a commodity. Giving his disinterpretation is a must, because the Prophet ﷺ explained it. He said he would neither purchase nor sell except by swearing by him. So imagine you're selling Allah's name by using it to buy and sell. And this again shows you the lowliness of somebody. And we shouldn't interpret the hadith to be literally somebody made Allah something to buy and sell, because that's impossible. It's impossible to think about Allah this way. The same way the Shaykh says about the Hayy Qudsi, when Allah will say to his servants, "O my slave, I asked you to feed me, but you did not feed me. And I asked you for water, and you did not provide for me." Till the end of the hadith, it doesn't mean literally Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It means if you went and you feed the one who was needy, you would have found me. If you visited the one who was sick, you would have found me like this. Because the context of the hadith allows that permissible interpretation. This is not ta'wil fasid, this is the correct interpretation, because the hadith indicates that. It's not taking the hadith out of context. So we benefit from this again. The one who protects his oaths wouldn't do that. He doesn't buy and sell with Allah's name. On top of that, if someone often does this, swears to you when they buy and sell, you don't trust him anyways. Naturally, they always say, "Wallahi, it's the best thing." We say, "I don't trust this person." Of course, he's just swearing by Allah. Why else would they be doing that unless something was not correct? This is so important. If we come with the right way, people wouldn't need to do this. And he deserves punishment, because if he was truthful, his frequent swearing by Allah's name gives the feeling that his disdains and is careless about making oaths. And if he was lying, then of course he combines between lying, taking the wealth unjustly, and then taking and deceiving people. All these sins. So if he told the truth and did this, it's still wrong. وَاحْفَظُوا أَيْمَانَكُمْ. And if it was wrong, he lied, then he's lying, eating the people's wealth, consuming people's wealth falsely. At the same time, he's also taking Allah's name lightly, and he's deceiving people. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned about people who do this. Whoever swears an oath while he is being unjust in it, devouring the wealth of a Muslim therein, he will meet Allah while he'll be angry with him. So important. But you're not allowed to take people's wealth except tarad, with tarad, which means with mutual acceptance and agreement. You can't eat people's wealth, it means consume their wealth through deceptive means. And then Shaykh al-Salahi brings another hadith. And this hadith is an important hadith in relation to this issue, but also other issues. And it's a hadith of Imran bin Hussein radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, where the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, خير أمتي قرني ثم الذين يلونهم ثم الذين يلونهم. قال عمران فلا أدري أذكر بعد قرنه مرتين أو ثلاثا. ثم إن بعدكم قوما يشهدون ولا يستشهدون ويخونون ولا يؤتمنون وينذرون ولا يوفون ويظهر فيهم السمن. This hadith is in Bukhari and Muslim. And the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, the best of my ummah are my generation, then those who come after them, and then those who come after them. And Imran said, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, I'm not sure if he mentioned 2 generations after him or 3. And he said, then after you will be those people who will give witnesses before or without being asked for witness, and they will be deceptive and fraudulent, and they will swear an oath and not fulfill it, and obesity will be clearly seen among them. This hadith is a very powerful hadith because it's one of the original hadiths to prove that fadl, the original virtue of the Qurun al-Faddala, which is the Salaf al-Salih, the pious predecessors. When we talk about Islam, we talk about the Salaf. The Salaf, it means those who came before. As-Salaf, it means Sabiq. Or Khalaf, Lahiq. That's what it means. Salaf means one before you. Khalaf means one came after you. So when we use the word Salaf, we mean those who came before us. So who are our Salaf? Not the people who were bad like Fir'aun and Iblis. No, our Salaf mean these groups. Khairun Nas, Qarni. The Sahaba are the best generation. And then come after them, the next generation. So these 3 were referred to as the Salaf because they preceded us in faith and Iman and in virtue. Qurun, generation, Mufaddala. They were virtuous. So here Rasulullah is declaring without any shadow of doubt, these are the best generations. Anyone who disputes that these generations are equal or less than us has no proof. I can't even say this because the Rasulullah said khair. Well, khair means better, not equal. So the Sahaba and Salaf means Sahaba and those generations comes after, the best generations. And the best generation implies then that their practice of Islam and their way of the religion is the one sanctioned by Allah. Allah is pleased with them and their way of the practice of the deen. So this is important because today when we talk about our deen, we say Quran and Sunnah ala fahm salaf al-ummah. We tell people we follow the Quran and Sunnah with what understanding? Salaf al-ummah, because of this hadith. The biggest problem Muslims today have is who and how do we understand this deen. No one disputes, except for very few groups amongst the Muslim community, that we return back to Quran and Sunnah. Anyone who says they're Sunni or Muslim say Quran and Sunnah. Where is the problem? Whose understanding? You can say my understanding, your understanding, my Shaykh, your Shaykh, and that's not what Rasulullah told us. Because when he explained these hadith, he told us that these people are the best generation, implying that their understanding of the faith is once allowed and validated by Allah. Radiyallahu anhum wa radu an. Allah is pleased with them and they're pleased with Allah. That doesn't come from any other generation. And Allah, He didn't just stop with that, He actually attached their belief to ours. فَإِنْ آمَنُوا بِمِثْلِ مَا آمَنْتُمْ بِهِ فَقَدْ اهْتَدَوْا. If you believe the way they believed, you're guided. It's important. No other generation has that. So today it's without dispute that these 3 generations, we pay key attention to them. This is the understanding of the Salaf. When we say Salaf, collectively, their religion and their way. It's a fahm that's collective. It's not one amongst them, it's all of them. Because all of them have been the best. And the 4th generation, even though it's khilaf here, is the 4th and 5th. We'll get to it. Those who come after the Prophet didn't give them that. He said that amongst them will be those who will take oaths without being asked, and they'll do this and do that. So he criticized some issues with those generations, proving that those generations, the 4th and beyond, even though they're good, they have a lot of imams and not the same as the earlier. What about us today? We don't need to debate 1400, 1440 that the Salaf were better than us. Some people, they have this confusion that Salaf were just like us. They're not just like us. They're better than us. They are role models for us. We should take them as an example. So we benefit from him. When he said best, he means the best. And so qarn, what does qarn mean? It means a generation, which Arabic, according to the scholars, means 100 years roughly. So 100-year time period. So the ulama, when they talk about the Salaf, they say roughly the time period of the Prophet ﷺ was the Prophet, and until his death, up until the year 110 or 120 Hijri. That's the end of the first generation. And this again is, some of the ulama, they made tahdeed, zaman al-salaf. They made a restriction in the time of the salaf. So beginning, the Shaykh says debates or whether or not we're taking the accounting from the hijrah or from the dispatchment, the prophethood. Depends how you look at it. Because the Prophet ﷺ said one hadith, after 100 years after today, no one of my companions will be alive. And no one on the earth will be alive right now. And that year, he said it, literally 100 years later, the last Sahabi passed away. And the Sahabi, Abu Amir Wathira, his last Sahabi passed away exactly 100 years after that, so 110. Some say this about 11 or 10 Hijri. So what we benefit from this, that's the earliest generation. Who are they? Sahaba, radiyallahu ta'ala anhum. We all know the Sahaba, their virtue. Then came a generation after them, which referred to as a tabi'een or tabi'un, which literally means those followers of the companions. السابقون الأولون من المهاجرين والأنصار والذين تبعوهم. That's what the origin comes from. تبعوهم, they followed them. What? بالإحسان. In good. So they didn't just follow them, they followed them in goodly in the religion. Those tabi'un, they literally lasted another 60 or so years. So some said up to 180 Hijri. 180 Hijri, last of tabi'un passed away. It's not 100 again, because the ulama, they differ in terms of exactly when. Because again, when are we counting? From the time the Prophet was a prophet, or are we counting from his death? So this is one number given, 180. And the last group that followed them, atba'u tabi'in or tabi'un, those groups, or a group of scholars and righteous people, died 230 Hijri, the last of them. So if you look carefully, the time of the Sahaba, all the way to 230 Hijri, this is a Salaf. Of course, some difference of opinion amongst the scholars in relation to that number, but nonetheless, this is what we're referring to. What about those that came after? There's a khilaf then. Is it 4 generations or is it 3? Because what did Imran say? فَلَا أَدْرِي أَذْكَرَ بَعْدَ قَرْنِهِ مَرَّةٍ وَثَلَاثٍ. So is it ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ يَلُونَهُمْ ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ يَلُونَهُمْ ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ يَلُونَهُمْ. So like this. So some scholars argue it's 4 generations, like Imam Ibn Hibban, rahimahullah. So up until the 4th, he said. So that would include scholars like Imam Bukhari, Imam Ahmad, and those who came later in the Salaf, they included. And other scholars said, no, it's only 3. So Sahaba and the 2 after them, that's it. Anyone who came after or following the Salaf. And this is because other hadith show us that those are actually the earlier group. Shaykh Muhammad bin Salih, rahimahullah, he does a nice discussion where he tries to combine between both narrations and says there's no contradiction. Although, from what I understand, many of the scholars, they say it's only the 2. Sahaba and 2 generations, and that's it. After that, it's what the Rasul described. Why is this hadith important? Because those generations, the Prophet didn't criticize them. He didn't say they have with them this and this. It doesn't mean they're sinless. But when it comes to the deen, their collective understanding is ma'soom. It's very important to understand. The collective understanding and practice of deen in this 3 generations is infallible. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, number 1, He sanctified in the Quran that this way, that their religion, their practice is pleasing to Allah. Rasulullah said, Khairun nas. He doesn't mean they don't commit sins. He means whatever was in these 3 generations of good and virtue and practice of deen, that's Islam. Because Allah, when He revealed the verse to him, Al-Yawm akmaltu lakum dinakum, that day Sahaba with him. Today the Islam is finished. And the Prophet ﷺ spoke about differing. So when differing occurred, how did he solve it? Man kana ala mithli ma ana alayhi al-yawm wa ashabi. Means the Sahaba are following Rasulullah ﷺ. That's Islam. That's the correct Islam. That Islam is infallible. Why? Because Allah said they're in Jannah. It can't be they were mistaken, they went to Jannah. Some people have to understand this. When people say follow Salaf, what is he intending? Not 1 or 2 imam. Collectively, all the understanding of those 3 generations. How can that understanding be placed against the understanding of 1 imam? Because some people will say, well, brother, we have to follow certain imam or madahib. The madahib are from the Salaf. The 4 imams are from the Salaf. But they're not the only ones. When we say we're following Salaf, we're saying we're not following 4 imams. We're following thousands of imam and their mafhum, their understanding of deen. How can we be mistaken? Subhanallah. A lot of people, they misunderstand that. So Shaykh Al-Albani said, rahimahullah, intisabi al-manhaj al-salaf huwa al-isma. It's infallibility. Why? Because you're following the generations. The Prophet said the best generations. The understanding has been applied, practiced, approved by Rasulullah and Allah in the Quran. If you follow them, by guarantee, Allah promises you, وَالَّذِينَ تَبِعُوهُمْ بِإِحْسَانٍ رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنْهُمْ وَرَضُوا عَنْهُ. Allah guarantee you pleasure and Jannah. So by methodology, there's no way around except to follow Salaf. And that's why it's correct to say it's wajib to follow manhaj salaf salih. Wajib to follow salaf. By just the approval alone. Wajib. Not must or recommended. Wajib. Because there's no way to Jannah besides that. Now someone will say, but there's differences of opinion here and there. Yes, that's acceptable in Islam. There's sometimes differing in understanding of issues. But when it comes to the foundation of faith, when it comes to beliefs and practice, this is the way to Allah. And this is so critical, and we're stressing this because a lot of people, they don't understand that. They say there are different ways to reach Allah, or they will come and tell you that we're living in modern times, we live in modern Islam. But this also would imply a lot of ignorance. Because Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he didn't come for his time only. He came for the Prophet Wahhaab. That's Jami'an, all the people to Yawm al-Qiyamah. So the best and most correct understanding of Islam is based on the Quran and Sunnah and whatever these three generations took as deen. And for those reasons, the earlier generation themselves used to say whatever our earlier predecessors, our Aslaf used to follow, that's deen. Some of them went to so for the extent, if Ahl Badr didn't know it, it's not deen. If Ahl Badr don't know it, that's not deen. And today, unfortunately, we have things we may say is deen, which maybe the Salaf didn't know. And opposite is true, that's something that they used to do of deen, which we're not very practicing yet. So we need to purify our faith and understanding by making sure our practice of Islam is compatible to the best followers of the Islam. This is what it means. And it doesn't imply them bringing in other things which are away from the deen. It doesn't mean we have to follow their lifestyle in things that they had regarding horses and tents. It doesn't mean that. Some people say, does that mean you take their life to put it in? It mean their deen. Not the way that they lived, because that was their time and Allah changed it to our modern time. But we have deen, the deen they practiced. Here's another benefit, which is after that generation, the Prophet hasn't criticized them for certain mistakes. So it's not necessary that just because the generation that came after had mistakes that they're no good. No, mistakes prevalent, group, meaning those times of fitna happen afterwards. For those reasons, some of the ulama also mention that during the time of the 4th century and beyond, the biggest versions of fitna and bid'ah began. The greatest forms of it. Even though there were other forms, the greatest floodgate of those innovations after the 4th generation. Because this is where the Prophet started criticizing certain mistakes occurring in them. Another thing we also want to remind ourselves of is that these generations, their practice of Islam is documented fully. It's not hidden to us. It's not guesswork. We have books and material with chains of transmission, hadith books we have to help us to know what they thought and believed. So it's not guesswork that we're coming in 1440 and saying maybe they did this, they didn't do that. We have it all clear. So our responsibility for us is to make sure we're practicing the Islam Allah wants. So important, because today we have a lot of versions of Islam. And we have people debating which Islam fits best here and fits. No. Islam is one. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us the religion He brought forth, and He gave us the parallel examples of generations. Now in relation to the 4th generation beyond and what they were criticized with, the one that we're taking is that they would be giving witness without being asked. So they're giving oaths and testimony with no one asking them, which could be interpreted in different ways. Right? One interpretation is that they're coming forward to give an oath and no one asked them to give it. It's not wrong, but they were not asked to. So it's better someone be asked to give an oath and he gives the oath. Or Shaykh says he can intend that they were asked to give an oath and they lied. So here we benefit that early generations were hesitant or careful with regard to oaths. They were not quick to give the oath and to give a testimony that they saw what they didn't see or said what they didn't say, etc. Also, the Rasul spoke about the fact that amongst them will be people who are not trustworthy, will be deceptive and fraudulent. The second attribute means in that time period betraying the trust. And khiyana is dangerous. Khiyana, deception, is one of the ways to the hellfire. It's not permissible to be deceptive. And we know we'll come to an era where there will be people who are trustworthy be called deceptive and vice versa. Deceptive people will claim to be trustworthy from the signs of the hour. So here we benefit that. Not everybody, but some of them will be like this. Just like Allah criticizes munafiqun, يُخَادِعُونَ اللَّهُ وَهُوَ خَادِعُهُم. They were trying to deceive Allah, Allah deceived them by allowing their plot and their evil to fall upon them. And the last amongst them is that they will be, or obesity will be clear amongst them. So it's one of the evidence to show that obesity was predicted by the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We say to the epidemic, pandemic, well, we know Islamically that will become. So what is the criticism here? Is he criticizing people who are overweight? No. The hadith is not criticizing people who are overweight because it says obesity means fat and flesh. The hadith may not be well understood considering the fact that flesh is clearly seen on them is not a choice of individual. Some people genetically might be overweight. And we know that today's time. So the ulama, what they say, what it intends by it, it's not people who are overweight or obese by themselves. What it intends is people who, they made themselves that way, by overeating, and falling into luxury of food and drink. So they were not careful about that and they became obese. Which would mean luxurious lifestyle, careless, and not aesthetic. So their major concern is enhancing their body and getting fat. As for someone being fat and he can't control it, there's not something blameworthy. It's like being tall or short like this. Because instead of Salih, some of them were heavy or called fat. It doesn't criticize their status. But it is intended by people who are creating that by lifestyle is not healthy or eating too much, etc. Because the Prophet ﷺ told us about etiquettes of eating and tried to curb us away from that. And today we know it's not healthy for the body, shorten lifespan, etc. by Allah's decree and will. So alhamdulillah, some things were already translated about obesity into epidemic and solution from the Islamic perspective. So Islam has a concern with that. And it's sad to say, a lot of obesity in our own communities. In today's time, in our communities, Muslim communities, amongst those we have the highest obesity rates in the world. You can check even the top 10 and others we see, Muslim countries are there. So this is a hadith showing us this is a discouraged practice. If someone wants to see Islamically, it's not something recommended. So Islam teaches us to cut down on that, to push away from that because of the harm. Also, we benefit from this that Islam is also tackling those social issues. Islam is not behind. So while obesity today is becoming alarming, in Islam we know it's coming. Alhamdulillah, from the Sunnah, and of course there are even more discussions, perhaps in the time, how the Prophet ﷺ used to deal with these things, encourage people to be healthy. The last hadith or narration in this is that the Salaf Salih would punish or discipline their children if they made a lot of oaths or they used to make oaths. And what we take from that narration, كانوا يضربوننا. Ibrahim al-Nakhai says we used to be beaten or disciplined, means our predecessors, means the Salaf, Sahaba, على الشهادة والعهد, for making testimony and covenants. وَنَحْنُ الصِّغَارُ, we used to be little kids. And so the benefit is good tarbiyah. Shaykh said what's apparent here is that the ruler used to do this. And the ruler used to take account if the kids were just making oaths and promises which they can't keep. And also shows, Shaykh said, the good tarbiyah that they had. Because some ulama argue maturity is a condition for giving testimony. For young, you give testimony, it doesn't count. Some ulama say it doesn't count. If a young boy or child gives an oath because he's underneath the age of puberty, his actions are not held accountable. Where others argue it does count, but the testimony of the young person about one another could be accepted. For records, it is difficult to find a grown person. Sometimes amongst the children, you need one child to testify against another child. So in those situations, we have to accept it because no one else was witnessing. The point of benefit says what it teaches us is a setup we take concern regarding the children in relation to this issue, teaching them not to do a lot of that. Good tarbiyah. And it's important because the ruler as well enforcing those actions to keep the people away from it. And today we see that this is part of the responsibility of the Islamic ruler, that he has to look out for the benefits of his community. So people are divided in the laws of Allah, it's his responsibility to advise them. It's important, he advises them. In the same way that if they were doing something which was against their dunya, he also has to advise them, correct them. So it's important to see how the Salaf used to train their children because again, they are role models for us in everything. So for us, even if we teach our children and our young ones not to be swearing a lot, making promises a lot, because the believer is not supposed to do that, especially when he's incapable. Allah says, وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِأَمَانَاتِهِمْ وَعَهْدِهِمْ رَاعُونَ. The believer are those who adhere to their promises and covenants. So if someone is doing a lot, they're young and no one disciplines them, corrects them, they think it's normal to break promises and break them and swear by Allah and they're just joking around. And we have this again, this problem is not new, we have it, we know it. So again, we see how do we remedy this problem. Kitab we need to take some recourse. Parents have to be involved. The seniors have to get involved and try to discipline the children in the proper means to teach them this is not acceptable. Because to take the deen lightly is one of the ways to failure or to destruction. Inshallah, we'll end with this much. If anyone has something they want to add or they want to mention, you can do so. Yes.
In regards to making promises, what's like the ruling on making promises from Allah. For example, like making a promise to not return to the sin, or a promise to do something specifically to Allah.
So promises in general are not the same as an oath, because when you make a promise, there's no expiation. It's recommended, or rather a must. You have to fulfill your promise. But when you make a promise to Allah, it's part of the ways of making tawbah, that we know that we promise not to return to an action. So it's nothing wrong with saying to say, I promise to Allah, I'm not going to do an action. In fact, when you make tawbah, you believe in your heart, you're not going to go back to it. And if Allah, it happens again, you renew your repentance. So it's nothing wrong from that angle to say in your heart, I promise, for the sake of Allah, I'm not going to do something because Allah's pleased with me not doing that. But in terms of the ruling of promise in general, they're not oaths, they don't have expiation. But it's not from the characteristics of the believer to be making promises and breaking them. So it's important, because Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam also mentioned from the ayat of the munafiq, the sifat of the hypocrite, is that إِذَا وَعَدَ أَخْرَفْ. When he makes a promise, he breaks it. So we should be careful when we promise or we make an agreement or something. The same with the issue of covenant, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds in the Quran, Bani Israel, He reminds of the covenant they took with Allah. But then they broke it. So it's important, if we're taking a promise or a covenant with Allah, we protect it. And of course, the greatest covenant that we have on us, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took from Adam and then his zurriyah, to worship Him alone sincerely without any partners. This is important. This is the ahad, the most important one Allah took from Adam and his durriyah, his children. As mentioned in Surah Araf, and all of us amongst the creation took it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took out from Adam's loins all of his children. And He said, Alastu bi rabbikum, I'm not your Lord. They all say, Qalu bala. So innately in our fitrah we have that inclination, Allah is one. Everyone has it. We took this covenant. So it's the greatest one you have in front of us. So it's very important that we preserve that by worshipping Allah away from shirk. So when we take these things, protect them. وَأَوْفُوا بِالْعَهْدِ إِنَّ الْعَهْدَ كَانَ مَسْئُولًا. Any other questions? Yes.
It was mentioned early on with regards to oath, that if you make an oath and the opportunity presents up to make a better oath or revise it to make it better, and you said there's still expiation for that. Can you give an example of in a situation where that would happen? Especially if you make an oath to a person and they may not feel like that's a better version of what you change it to.
So for example, when it comes to oath and changing it, for example, you say to someone, okay, I promise or take an oath by Allah, we're going to do this and this project together. It's a good project or whatever venture it is. And then you come up with a better one. So you say, okay, you know what? Forget that one, we're going to go with this one. So you swear by Allah, you're going to work with this person in a particular venture, and then you found a venture better than the one you promised him, or you swore by Allah you're going to participate in. So in that case, you remind that person, hey, I've changed my perception on this, I found something better. Of course, people want better, and then you expiate it. The same if you said to yourself, by Allah, I'm going to do this particular action every day. And then you learn a sunnah that this is an action better than that, more rewarding. So you go with the one that's more rewarding, and you expiate for the one that you said you're going to do. And this is normal in terms of you learn about something better than something else. Of course, in that situation as well, you can obviously just fulfill your oath as well, and then just go on later on do your good action. But if you make an oath and you find a good one, better than it, then the sunnah of Rasulullah is to go for that better one. That's what he used to do, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And also important benefit that if we do make an oath and it's something haram, because this happens as well, you promise someone you're going to do something haram with them, by Allah. Now this is a problem, you can't fulfill that. So Shaykh mentions as well there, what do you do in that situation? You can't fulfill it, but you have to expiate. So there's a difference of their opinion there. You have to expiate something which you said it's a haram oath. Some ulama said no, and others said yes. But we benefit, he says that if it's a situation which both sides are wrong, like for example, you promise someone something and it's haram, you found out, and you swear by Allah you're going to help him with it, and if you tell him I can't do it now, it makes another problem. He said between those two you take less of two evils. So if you have to fulfill it, you make tawbah to Allah, he said. Or you just don't do it at all, make tawbah to Allah and expiate it. So sometimes you have to measure in it, but in terms of the better one, always try to go for the better, because the better is the best thing we're looking for. Ahsan wa amala, always we try to look for the best good deeds. And then you expiate it by doing one of the four options given there. Yeah, that's how it works. Yes.
So does expiation only apply when you swear by Allah, or for example, like if I say, okay, we'll go eat together, but then I'm walking there and I change my mind, like I don't want to eat.
Yeah, we're talking about swearing by Allah. So these ahkam in relation to Allah, because these are called oaths. Yeah? Swearing by Allah, and you're intending it, and it's in the future, and you're capable of doing it. So when regards to things that, for example, you say, I promise, that's like a promise. We'll go out and eat together, and I say, I'm not hungry anymore. It's a promise, you change your mind, and it's nothing wrong. And sometimes it happens, especially if it had nothing to do with something which you had control over. For example, I wanted to eat, then I didn't feel so hungry anymore, I canceled it. No problem, because you didn't feel hungry anymore. But also, if you promise to go to the masjid, for example, swore by Allah, an oath, you're going to go to the masjid tomorrow, and then it rained very badly, you couldn't go to the masjid. Do you have to expiate? No. The ulama say if something prevents you from doing it outside of you, you don't have to. So for example, it's bad weather, I couldn't go to the masjid, I swore by Allah I'm going. Now I don't have to expiate because it wasn't from my end. Right? So it's important. Those are more like promises when we tell someone to go. But as a believer, we should try our best to be trustworthy in that too. So when we tell someone, let's go out and do something, it's good to do it. Go with it. Even if it's like later on you feel like I don't want to do it, it's better to go with it. Why? Because trustworthiness and character. Today's time, it's very hard. Right? Because we have a lot of these issues. We're letting down people, and it's not befitting. The believer should be based on his word. The believer should also try to always help out. He should always try to be the best character. So, but this is different. It's different. Yeah.
I have a question. So basically, if you say Wallahi to a friend, like for example, Wallahi I won't drink anymore, and if you say that Wallahi I won't drink, and every time I do, I'll give $10 to sadaqah or something. So let's say you do actually drink the next time. Does that mean that, and then if you give $10 sadaqah, does that mean you fulfilled your promise, or do you have to fast and do the things that you need to do for breaking it up?
Yeah, because in those kind of oaths, like if you swear by Allah you're not going to drink, you need to fulfill that oath. Number one, it's already wajib on that you don't do it. But you're right. If you just say, okay, I'm going to give $10, I gave $10. That's not the expiation Islamically. So you have to also try to expiate for that one too. Yeah.
Sorry, I need to clarify that. Let's say you make this oath to a friend or something. That's what I mean. So let's say you tell your friend, I won't do this anymore. Every time I do, I'll give sadaqah. So does that mean now, let's say you do give the sadaqah, does that mean you fulfilled your promise, or you have to take it a step further?
Well, that's the thing. If you swore by Allah or not, if you just tell them, okay, I promise, I'm not going to do this anymore.
You
swore by Allah. Now you're dealing with Allah. It's like, even if it's to your friend, giving the $10 after you swear by Allah, you're not going to give. It only implicates that side that you are going to give that, but it doesn't mean that your oath is being fulfilled. So you have to stop drinking, and you said by Allah you won't, so you have to fill it. And if you didn't, then you have to expiate the way the Sharia says. So if you also obligated yourself another part, which I'm going to give $10, that's on your end. Because we're not allowed to make, even with tawbah, you can add a condition to your tawbah that you're going to give something. So for example, part of your tawbah, you could say, as part of my tawbah, I'm going to give this much money. Ka'ab, he did this. He actually paid some money which would give the sadaqah as part of his tawbah. You could do that. But when you say these things, you have to also remember that you swore by Allah's expiation the way Allah wants it. So obviously the best thing to do when someone does make this oath, and he's in the middle between not drinking and drinking, his friend should come and stop him from drinking. Because he's a good friend. He says you shouldn't drink. First it was haram, and second you made an oath. This is how the Shaykh has mentioned the middle part before you get to the atonement. So this is the best way. But let's say you did fall into it. You make tawbah. You expiate your sins, your oath Islamically. You give it $10 if you want as well, because also you promise you're going to give it. And inshallah, that will also be a good deed from your end. And you work hard not to do it again. It's very important because sometimes we forget we're human beings, we fall back and forth in our sin. So always be wary of giving oaths. If you avoid it, it keep you away from a lot of trouble. As you see, like some people, they don't get that's what we mean. When you take a lot of oaths, imagine you say this, I'm alive, I'm going to do it, and then so many things you didn't do. It's adding up on your case. And then now, if you didn't know, from now, you say, inshallah, Allah forgive you. Because you were ignorant of it. But now that you know more about it, you can't say like, oh, I didn't know. Especially when you see it's not necessary. So some ulama say, how do you can reconcile between the dislike we're taking from a lot of oaths here and the fact that it's ibadah, means that whenever you do take an oath, fulfill it. That's how you do the ibadah. But doing a lot of oaths is not recommended, we said. Because of this situation, because you put yourself in a lot of headache, and if you don't have money, you have to find ways to fast, and it's a lot. So inshallah, may Allah make it easy for us.
There's like a new behavior I've been seeing about Hilfan. So someone who does an oath for like someone else. So for example, I've seen this. So say someone invites someone to dinner, then the other person is full. So the guy inviting will say, "Wallah, halaftak, you will eat this." And the person says, "No, I can't." He says, "No, I said, Wallah, you will eat it." So what's the... I've seen it actually happens. It's like a halaftak or a man, a halaftak. You have to
just eat, man. Just eat.
I understand, but like,
Allah Alam, this one, I don't know.
so, and it's getting popular, I've seen this many times. So I don't know.
Allah Alam, I don't know this one. We gotta look into this more. Well, we shouldn't be doing these things in the first place. Allah Alam, yeah. So we'll look into that one. Allah Alam.
Yeah, because
Yeah, this is something new, huh? So,
Let's say if you say, Wallahi, I will do it, inshallah.
yeah, this is a good point.
You don't get the need to do it.
See, this is a good question. If you say Wallahi, inshallah, that's one way to get out of all of this. If you say Wallahi, inshallah, you know expiation. So you say inshallah, but you have to intend to actually want to do it. So you're right. If you say Wallahi, inshallah, you never intended, it's still sinful. It's a broken promise. And it's also a type of deception. Because you said inshallah because you know you're never going to do it anyways. So the ulama say, why do you add that istithna to protect yourself in case it didn't happen? So for example, you say to someone, Wallah, I'm going to buy that product, inshallah. Especially in business deals, you know, people like want confirmation. You're going to buy the car, Wallahi, inshallah, I'm going to get it. So you save yourself in case that you change your mind, but you have intention to buy it and something might come, you know what, I don't feel good about it. So no expiation, you're not held accountable for it. But you don't have to fulfill it because you say inshallah. But here's the thing, if you did say that, if Allah just mentioned you just said inshallah, you didn't, you just want to say it, you're never going to buy it anyways. You just and sometimes it's a problem too when you just say inshallah for no reason. It's not good like this. We say inshallah with the azm, have some seriousness. You mean you're going to do it, right? Not just inshallah, which means inshallah, they're never going to do it. Because nowadays it's so common amongst us that when we say inshallah, no one knows what is intended by that. Sometimes we say you're not going to do it. When you say inshallah, that's just for some of us we interpret now, no, he's not doing it because he didn't say yes, he said inshallah, and he's kind of iffy. So very important to protect ourselves too. Say it with seriousness.
Let's say if you're making dua, and then if you say like, Wallahi, Allah, if you give me this, I will do this. Does the dua have more chances to be accepted?
Say it again.
Like if you're making dua, right, and then you say, Wallahi, Allah, if you give me this, I will do this.
Yeah, you see,
the dua have more chances to be accepted.
See, this kind of dua, if you ask Allah, if I do this, you do this, is not the best of manners. For Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala akthar, He can give you don't need to do anything for Him. It's not a favor that we do any ibadah for Him or anything. So the best way you ask Allah sincerely and you don't be shy. Allah can ala kulli shayin qadir. So the ibadat that we do doesn't benefit Allah, benefits us. And number two, when you say, oh Allah, if you give me this job, I will pray more to you. Allah doesn't need us to pray. We need the prayer. So when we benefit this, we should say, Allah, give it to me. I make tawassul bil a'mal salih. I say, I pray Allah salah 5 times a day. I do the good deeds. Allah, please allow me this. Because this is tawassul sahih. You use the ibadat that you do to ask Allah more. So say, Allah, because I pray 5 times a day, I read Quran, I do good deeds, allow me to get this job. Like the 3 men in the cave, this is what they did. They used the good deeds. But if you say, Allah, I will do, you can't bribe and ransom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not also befitting because it's making that Allah need about what we need. It's not something we want. Whether we should say, we're in a position of a beggar, because you're making dua, you're begging Allah, you come in the position, the maqam of the beggar. It's like imagine you're talking to someone and say, if you give me sadaqah, I'll mention your name to other people. It's not going to give you like that because it's in a position of begging. The one giving feels like you're putting conditions on me, I'm giving you. So rather what we should do is remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He can give us anything. But be sincere and do it like this. Allah, I do good deeds for your sake. If I did any of these good deeds for your sake, I pray salah for your sake, give me. Because now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will answer this because you make tawassul, which is sahih. You're asking Allah for the good you've already done. And Allah, He loves that. He loves this, yeah. It's the best way.
Do not don't say I will do such and such tomorrow, except that you say inshallah. Is there I've heard, or sometimes you use like bi'idhnillah instead of inshallah. Are they interchangeable, or when do you use which?
Bi'idhnillah, inshallah, both of them carry similar meanings, right? Because everything has bi'idhnillah, Allah's idhn. At the same time, everything recurs by Allah's irada and His mashiach. But the sunnah is we say inshallah. This is what we're taught. So we look in the Quran and Sunnah, we see this is the Sunnah. وَلَا يَسْتَثْنُونَ. We know the people who didn't make istithna, Ashab al-Jannah, what happened to them? So this is the Sunnah. You could say bi'idhnillah, it carries similar meaning. And there's nothing wrong with that. But to make it a common practice, all the time bi'idhnillah, no. Inshallah is the Sunnah. In the Quran and the practice of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Sahaba.